Good morning and welcome to the programme. If you're out and about this morning, please do take care. Exceedingly difficult weather conditions out there, and having covered a lot of storms in the past, you just don't know in terms of fallen trees and things like that. So just be very, very careful out there this morning. Don't make any unnecessary journeys, as Teresa would say. Joining me in studio is Rob Landers. I'm going to be talking to Rob in a minute about political issues, about health matters, and about what will drive maybe voters in terms of their thinking over the next 6 weeks. We're also going to be talking to political correspondents about when the election may be called and what issues might well be at play. We have Heather Reynolds from AgeTech coming in and Derval Graham from the South East Regional Assembly. We're really looking forward to this chat. We had discussed briefly last week about empowering women, and only 7% of chairpersons of CEOs are women. So we've got two women, one from the private sector and one from the public sector, who have done it in their field of excellence, and we want to hear from them about how exactly the situation is for women at high levels within organisations. Interesting topic, isn't it, Rob? Like
Indeed, yeah.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah,
I know the manager of the hospital is a woman at present, and
Indeed.
There's some women that are able to get to the top of the professions. We'll be discussing that with Heather and Derval. Also going to be talking to Brian Whelan, a stonemason, about some graves, historic graves that are dilapidated, and there's bones showing at St. Patrick's Gateway. St. Patrick's Gateway are going to be giving us a statement on that. As you heard on the bulletin, Liam Brazel has decided he's not going to run for Fine Gael in the Waterford constituency. There are going to be announcements in the next 24 hours regarding two other men and their intentions to run or not. We also want to know your views about this proposal that there was going to be a speaker. His name is Jason Everett. They've been cancelled this week. His talks on homosexuality and contraception and the Chastity Project. Will be talking to members of the LGBT community. And about weddings. We want to know about bridezillas. And if you were going to get married, would you actually say to your guests, just give me money, please? I don't want electric carving knives or ironing boards. What was the best wedding gift you got?
A fondue set.
Fondue set. What is a fondue set? Do you remember the Generation game with Bruce Forsyth, and then there was the other guy and the conveyor belt, and the stuff would be going along the belt, and you had to name all these things, tea makers and toasters and stuff like that. So let us know your views on that, please. 083 333 975. You can call Laura on 051846123, and if we've any breaking weather related stories in terms of roads, in terms of trees down, we'll let you know. And also, if you want to let us know, please get in touch with us. Dr. Rob Landers is a consultant pathologist at University Hospital Waterford. He's former Chief Clinical Director at the hospital, and the hospital is part of the South grouping of hospitals. You're here in a personal capacity. I appreciate you coming in, and thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, the new mortuary has started. Is that right?
That's correct, Damien. Yeah, I think that there are some diggers on site, and certainly the project has begun. And it has a completion timeline of approximately 18 months from what I hear. So that is good news. It has started, and I would expect that within 2 years will be operational.
And what is the situation at present or up to then? Have things improved a little bit? I know you were given extra freezer units and things like that.
Yes. To be fair, things have improved somewhat, and we have extra refrigeration capacity. So we shouldn't have those awful situations developing that had developed in the past. And that'll get us by until the new mortuary and the new building and the new suite is ready for use.
What's the overall figure on the new mortuary? How much is it costing, do we know?
In the region of 6.5 million, I think.
Million, okay. Yeah. What's the feeling like over in the hospital? I know we're not going to talk about too much specifics, but we hear stories of hospital waiting lists. We hear Brendan McCann's emails that were reported in the News and Star last week. Obviously, the 24/7 campaign is still out there. I spoke to you approximately a year ago when I started in the job. Has it been a difficult year for University Hospital Waterford?
It has been a difficult year, but I think no more so than many other hospitals of a similar size around the country. Obviously, we're in the middle of January, so we're in peak flu season. The hospital is at full capacity. It's over capacity. Again, most of the Model 4 and Model 3 hospitals around the country at this stage would be running over at about 110% capacity, which isn't good. But that's just a reflection of the illness that's out there and restraints in capacity that we have in the hospital. So the hospital is under pressure, The staff are working extremely hard. It's due to the staff, I suppose, the frontline staff really, that the place keeps going, because they are working in, and Dr. McCann has outlined some of those conditions very publicly, but they are working in very difficult conditions, trying to deliver the best care they can in conditions that are crowded and with a lot of pressure on them.
It must be very difficult being a frontline staff person working in those conditions. Like, the public are generally receptive to people trying their best, and the staff do try their best. So, but it's still very difficult.
It's incredibly difficult, and I think the public do reflect that. And what we hear all the time, it's a question of access. Once a person gets into the hospital system, the care they get is largely very good, and the staff are hugely dedicated. Both the medics, the nurses, and the allied health professionals. Many of them go way and beyond the call of duty to deliver the care to the patients. The problem for the large part is actually the access, is getting that bed in the first place, or getting that outpatient appointment, or getting that theatre date to have your surgery. The problem largely with the health service in this country is one of access and capacity. The care being given when you get into the system is excellent. And
Leo Varadkar was on the radio yesterday talking about that, about access. And one of the things that has come up, just looking at a billboard that Enda Kenny had ahead of the last general election, was, "We will end the trolley crisis."
Yeah, I think that billboard goes back to 2007 or something like that. And again, you had Mary Harney saying, that it was a national emergency when the numbers were a fraction of what they are now. And in many ways, what I'm surprised is that as a nation, if you like, we've tolerated this. We've normalised it. And even I thought the Taoiseach's interview yesterday, there was an attempt to normalise this, as if to say, look, this isn't too bad. Lots of other countries have this. They don't. They don't have this. Certainly any other country that's pouring the money we're pouring into the health service doesn't have this. And if you compare us, and people are beginning to compare us now to Scotland, which is a similar size population-wise, similar urban-rural disperse of the population demographics, Scotland manage it way better than we do. They have a much better system, much more organised. So they don't have the access problems that we have.
If you were Minister for Health, what would you do in your first year?
In the first year, it sounds very simple, Damien, but we need a plan. There is no plan. And
what about Sláintecare?
No, I don't think that's a plan. That's an idealistic proposal, cross-party proposal in the Dáil. The critical thing about that Sláintecare is it's not funded. It's going to cost billions to implement. And it's not funded. So Sláintecare is just an ideology. Some of it is quite populist, but it's not delivering any increase in capacity. It's not delivering any increase in consultant posts. So what's it going to do? It's rearranging the deck chairs in terms of administrative structures.
So what would you do in your first year as Minister for Health? Where would you start?
What we need to do... It would take longer than a year. You need a plan. We need a plan to deliver at least 2,500 extra hospital beds. We need a plan to deliver approximately 4,000 step-down beds. And we need a plan to deliver about 1,500 new consultant posts into the system. So none of the political parties, from what I see, have that plan. They're making noises about it and they're throwing sound bites into the system, but they haven't got a funded plan to deliver those. Until we sort out the capacity issues and the staffing issues, we're going to continue to have the problems we have. So somebody needs to... This is going to take political leadership and courage, because there will be hard decisions to make. We have too many acute hospitals. We have too many emergency departments. We can't staff them. We can't staff them with quality people. And we're running into problems. So we need this plan, and it'll take intense political courage and leadership to deliver it. That's been lacking for as long as I've been working in healthcare in this country.
How difficult is it as a consultant to speak up?
It is difficult. I think there's a fear out there amongst consultants about speaking up. I had a quick word with my hospital manager this morning to let her know I was coming on the show and talking in general terms about the health service. And, she was quite supportive of me doing that, to be fair. But there is a fear amongst consultants about talking out. I think that there shouldn't be. Certainly people need to hear it from the frontline staff, what the reality of the situation is. And I think we have a duty as doctors and medical council guidelines to advocate for our patients. If our patients are not getting the care they should due to restrictions within the system, we have a duty to speak out and make that known.
Why would there be a fear?
Some of it is historic, Damien, I suppose, and people feared, that there may be a disciplinary process started against them. I don't really think that's the case. I'm not aware of a consultant being disciplined for speaking out.
How did you get on last year?
Yeah, I was just going to come on to that. The other fear people have of speaking out is that when you do speak out, is that your reputation is questioned and your professional integrity is questioned. And that happened to us, my colleagues and I last year when we spoke out about the mortuary, or rather when the mortuary debacle came into the public domain. The first response of the corporate HSE in that instance was to question what we were saying and therefore question our professional integrity. And that ultimately culminated in an apology from the Taoiseach to us for that when we were proven right. So that's a tough place to be. It's not a nice place to be. How did you feel? Yeah, we spoke publicly on it because we were advocating for the people of Waterford and the people of the South East, and it's very uncomfortable. It's not a nice place to, certainly, as I say, not a nice place to be. It's a stressful situation. But yeah, look, Varadkar apologised in the finish, and we also had a personal apology from the hospital manager over that situation. So look, let's we're moved on. But that does, when colleagues see that happening, they're going to be slow to speak publicly. They're going to say, well, if this could be me out there.
Yeah, because you're doing it with good intentions.
Yes.
You're doing it for the betterment of patients and you want to do the best, and yet you're working within an employment sector that you don't want to diss on your employer as such. So it's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one, and I think some of the frustrations, and a lot of the frustrations in our hospital at the moment, say, local hospital management generally are on our side. They're seeing the pressures we're under. They're seeing the pressures in the ED. They're seeing the pressure that they know what the waiting list figures are, etc. It's the level above that the frustration kicks in at, because local hospital management are really not empowered as they should be to make decisions, to make funding decisions. So there's a whole hierarchy of administration within the HSE that is frustrating.
Would you speak out again if you had to?
Yes, I think long and hard about it, but I would if I had to. Yeah, because I won't get this quotation right, but all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing, and I think if there's a wrong being perpetrated, certainly in the health services, I see it here in Waterford. Yeah, I would speak out. Because that's, we have to, we have to speak out. We have to get things right, and we have to put things right.
A text in, the Swiss fondue set, this person talking about it. I thought he was talking about the Swiss care in the health service. Do you think health is going to form a big issue in the general election campaign?
I would see it forming a huge issue, Damien, both nationally and locally. Nationally, I mean, the health service is at a crisis. They sound like soundbites, but it's an unprecedented crisis. All aspects of our health service are under pressure and in chaos. The hospital sector, primary care sector with the GPs, the community care sector, the mental health sector. I mean, every day we open a newspaper, you see the latest crisis in any one of those sectors. So health is a huge problem. It's an unprecedented problem, even in Western Europe, considering the money we're putting in. We have the lowest number of hospital beds per head of population in Western Europe. We have the lowest number of hospital consultants per head of population in Western Europe. So it's a huge issue, and it's now at the stage, and I'm hearing it anecdotally from colleagues in the hospital, that people are afraid to come into the hospitals now, because they're hearing of the pressures in ED and the trolley waits, etc., and they're actually presenting later and sicker to the hospitals than what they should be. So, a developed country where we have, even in Waterford, 40,000 people waiting for an outpatient appointment. Over 1 million people nationally waiting for a hospital appointment. Paediatric chemotherapy being cancelled. Kids with scoliosis not getting their surgeries, people waiting 18 months for hip operations, people waiting similar times for cataract operations to stop them going blind. I mean, we're a developed country. This is unacceptable. And I think, you have the two major issues in the election will be housing and health.
Dr. Rob Landers, thank you very much. Now, joining me in a second is Juno McEnroe from the Irish Examiner. We're going to be talking politics. Firstly, a quick text from somebody after our talk there with Rob Landers. Good morning, Damien. I was in the orthopaedic clinic last Monday with my husband, who was there for a checkup. While we were there, an elderly lady was very upset and seemed to be very confused. But the care that this lady received was above and beyond the call of duty. The effort made by nursing staff, by doctors, by the porters, the security of the department was excellent. This is why our health service needs to be better resourced and funded to honour the great work that the frontline staff do every day. Thank you very much. That is from Maria. Juno, good morning.
Good morning.
Just that text there kind of summarises a little bit of what we have been hearing, isn't it? Like, people have this empathy, they understand, and the frontline staff that are there, they understand the public, and the public have been very, I suppose, not revolutionary about this. They don't blame the staff in any way. They work with them, don't they?
Anybody who has had a family member on a trolley in A&E, at an operation or sick, even to a GP, they understand that those staff, those medical people, they do their very best. And I suppose when we come to an election time like this, behind the rhetoric, behind the spats and the mudslinging, really it does come down to services. It does come down to ordinary families and what their needs are.
Do you think the election is going to be dominated by the likes of health and people's experiences like that from Maria?
Yeah, initially, definitely, I would, Damien. I mean, we've seen, unprecedented numbers on trolleys, in around 700 in the last week or two. We've seen concerns about, the waiting list for surgeries. There's a lack of GPs in the country. Speech and language therapies, particularly in the south, there's massive waiting periods there. These numbers have only been climbing in recent months, and my experience as a journalist, really, they're pretty bad compared to previous years. Nonetheless, while health will certainly, I think, dominate, and as it has in the last 24 hours anyway, between Taoiseach Leo Varadkar and Fianna Fáil's Micheál Martin, while health will dominate initial stages, and housing will, and homelessness will, and probably climate change will, I think the economy will come into play and come centre stage as well. The issue of taxation, the issue of property taxes, the economy, particularly for the major parties, always is central trust on their platforms. And once we see the manifestos come out, these shiny new promises and pledges and funding mechanisms for the next 5 years, you can be guaranteed there'll be secret weapons in there that these parties will try and muster and use to command interest from voters. And they'll try and get past the numbers in health and get past the numbers in housing.
Effectively, though, this election is being called and caused because of a vote of no confidence in Simon Harris. The Taoiseach realised that he wasn't going to have the numbers. Noel Grealish and a few of the others weren't going to vote. And that the likes of John McGuinness wasn't going to vote with Fianna Fáil or abstain. So effectively, Simon Harris and his inability to control health has caused this election.
In part it has, yeah. I mean, you're right. The Dáil arithmetic has significantly changed since before Christmas. The names you mentioned there, coupled with the resignation of Dara Murphy, Fine Gael are down numbers. They've lost a number. Peter Fitzpatrick and Louds, for example, gone independent. They don't have the same control in the Dáil, but a number of obstacles have been overcome as well. I mean, the Brexit shambles, the Brexit negotiations, those crisis moments where we all thought there could be a disorderly Brexit and they could impact on the economy, that for the moment has passed. Then the deal in the north in recent days where Stormont and power sharing is back up and running. Some of those obstacles are out of the way. And at the same time, the confidence supply deal, that pact, that support pact between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, that is all but a rag now. That has been ripped apart in the last month. That deal that allowed Fine Gael keep government, keep power on the basis of support from Fianna Fáil, that has gone now. So it's a combination of factors. But we all knew before Christmas, there was a lot of speeches going on in the Dáil, people thanking each other and saying, hopefully we'll be back after Christmas. And there was a sense that maybe we might not. And everybody had that niggling feeling over Christmas. Listen, have your rest, have your recuperation, get ready to be out in the cold nights for canvassing and for following politicians and for knocking on doors. And that's come now. The Taoiseach had wanted an election in May, but realistically, he's snookered. The days of this coalition are coming to an end. And for him to keep the political narrative, to control, to not lose it, in the face of complaints and concerns about health, he needs to decide the election in the coming days.
And your colleague Daniel McConnell, yourself and the Irish Examiner staff are tweeting, and your article in the paper today is excellent. Kevin Boxer-Moran has just left the Independent Alliance, so with John Halligan's expected retirement, this essentially ends this group. So there's another movement in terms of potentially what happens next as well after the general election. What date do you think it's going to be, Juno?
At the moment, if the Taoiseach calls it on the Thursday, after his unfinished business, as he said himself, between European Commission President coming here and meeting the British Prime Minister today, if he calls it on the Thursday, he has the best of both worlds. He can decide to have it on the 7th of February, which is a Friday, or Valentine's Day, the 14th of February, which is also a Friday. It's a difficult one to decide. Some people would say a short, curt campaign is best for the incumbents and for the bigger parties, maybe overall, particularly in this climate, in this weather. But maybe 14th, maybe stretch it out a little, give people some more time.
Yeah.
The Taoiseach could surprise us all as well. He might say, look, we don't want to get into election mode until Britain has officially left the European Union at the end of January. Let's hold tight. But I would say February 14th.
February 14th you go for. There you go, you're calling it. Juno McEnroe, political correspondent of the Irish Examiner. Thanks for talking to us, Juno.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We'll talk to you soon again. Thank you very much for that. People texting in. James has phoned in as well, 051 846 123. A big factor for me will be the retiring age. Sinn Féin said they're going to bring it down. 67 for me is insane. I've never voted for Sinn Féin. I've worked all my life, worked 30 years in one place, another job before that. Now I'm working nights. I was born in 1958. I'm now expected to work until I'm 67. Politicians get out with their nice big pensions and the rest of us are expected to slave away. Coming up, we are going to talk to two women about empowering women. A very, very interesting discussion coming up. Now, welcome back to the programme. Independent Alliance jumping ship. They can't be seen to vote confidence in the Health Minister. 24/7 cardiac cover comes to mind. That's a text in from Lily. Damien, I can't understand how people keep voting Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael time after time. Surely somebody else couldn't do any worse. Damien, regarding the health service, I don't think doctors and former medical professionals are the best people to manage the health service. Realistically, we need managers who know what to do and people that are able to do their jobs. We're going to talk about people that are able to do their jobs now with Heather Reynolds. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning, Damien.
Thanks very much for coming in.
You're welcome.
I don't know why you agreed to do this, isn't that it?
That's absolutely it. On a day like today as well with the weather.
Derval Brennan, good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
Thank you very much for coming in as well.
You're very welcome.
Derval, what position do you hold? You've just got a new posting within the South East Regional Assembly.
That's right, Damien. I'm now the Assistant Director of the Southern Regional Assembly. We are based in Waterford for the last 20 years, but we've got some really new interesting responsibilities, and I think you'll be hearing a lot more about the Southern Regional Assembly in the next while.
What is the Southern Regional Assembly?
OK, so we're a tier of regional government. There's 3 regional assemblies in the country. I suppose our major stakeholders are the local authority, but by extension, it's the citizens of our region. And our region, the southern region, is Munster and the South East. But what we do, the 2 main things that we do, is we manage European funded programmes, and we also, I suppose, we're guiding from the national planning framework. We've developed a strategy that'll impact on the lives of the citizens, of the people of the region. So that's, I suppose, the most important thing that we're doing at the moment.
It's an important job, and well done on getting the posting. Congratulations. Yep. Heather Reynolds, you are in HTech. You were involved in helping set it up. You were in AOL originally. What position do you hold in HTech?
So HTech is no longer, Damien. So we were just sold to or acquired by a company called Infosys, one of the largest consulting technology firms in the world, actually. So after a 10-year entrepreneur story, I came from a multinational background, was made redundant, started in HTech and grew it to 1,700 people. And then we were acquired by Infosys more recently. So I'm now just an employee. But I do run their Ireland operations for them, and really looking forward to the journey that we go on with them. More importantly, I guess that brings growth and ultimately big brand names potentially to the region.
I asked both of you to come in, and I'm delighted you're here. So if you've always worked in the private sector, Heather, is that right?
Correct, yep.
And Derval, you've always worked in the public sector?
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, no, I worked in private and community, yeah. So, no, I'm in the public sector for probably 18 years now at this stage. But no, I haven't.
Figures came out last week, and we were discussing with a number of different people about empowering women and women getting to the top of the professions. Only 7% of CEOs, chairpersons of large corporations in Ireland are women. Year 2 people that have kind of shown that it can be done and how it can be done. How can it be done, Heather? How did you do it? That sounds like a silly question, but it's such a simple question.
Well, I think anyone in the position never really thinks they're successful. I don't think people look at it like that. I think people reflect and go, how did I end up here? And I mean, I have always said, it's sheer hard work, sacrifice, and I don't think I ever said in my career that I'm going to be a general manager, a CEO or an entrepreneur. I never said that. That was just not the way I looked at things. I've worked hard like a lot of people, and success is relative to everyone individually. And I've just, I guess, looked at everything to be the best at what I'm doing at that time. And what's come to me as a result has been a career path that, when I reflect on it, has been successful for me.
Derval?
OK, I would absolutely 100% agree with Heather in terms of the individual. You know, everybody has their own story to tell. They have, I suppose, people who mentored them, supported them, we had opportunities, all of that. But I think going back to the more substantive issue that you raise around that inequity and that disproportionate representation, I think actually, nearly in some ways, the winning of the Young Scientist competition by those 2 young men from Colosh to Colum, I think that probably tells really the basis of the story why, if you like, in the round, why there isn't an equal representation of genders across the board. I think with some of the really interesting issues that they highlighted, and I think we all as a society need to look at this and kind of be, I suppose, if we're interested in balance, nature's interested in balance, so we want to get the most out of it, not necessarily doing the same thing again, but if we want to, I suppose, realise the potential of all citizens, we need to look at why some people, for different reasons, are not rising to the top. So some of the just 2 interesting points that I took from the study that those 2 boys did, they were very much aware, and it's been an ongoing thing, and I suppose we're very aware of it as a public body, about the need for people to be well versed and well trained and well qualified in STEM. But women are not represented as well. Women are just as equally...
And that's the science,
technology, engineering,
maths
subjects, OK. So this is an issue, and in a global world where these are valorised, these skills are valorised, and this is the way that we're going to lead the march and be a strong industry, economy, we need to look at why that is. So they were aware of that difference, but they looked at 5 to 7 year olds and they already established, a 5 to 7 year olds already had a sense of girls' place in the world and boys' place in the world. But girls thought the boys' skills were better than theirs, and boys didn't think girls' skills were as good as theirs. So that's a really interesting thing, because most parents, that are of the age that would have a 5 to 7 year old would probably say to yeah, I'm a very, equally minded person. I don't bring, but there is stereotyping going on. So I would suggest policy is at the basis of changing that.
What do you think of that, Heather?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I look back on the last 10 years, I think things have changed, and I've been involved in some programmes that have done peer-to-peer mentoring, so Grown for Growth and Acorns national programmes that see some of the best talent that we have at female entrepreneur level in the country. And there's quite stringent requirements to even get into those programmes. So it's not even bringing just anyone who has a business concept to the table. It's bringing people who actually have revenue already and success in an entrepreneur capacity. I've kind of felt that we're being a bit harsh on ourselves, because in the last 10 years I have found that the businesses that I've dealt with across multiple sectors, be it financial, technology based, I'm seeing a lot of women. So if it's not entrepreneurship, I see a lot of women in senior roles. And I do find that the nuance of global organisations means that the historical role of a CEO or a general manager is sort of archaic now. And actually people, particularly at leadership levels, running units, functions, sectors, whatever it is, senior management with decision making and strategic input are female. And that has been my experience, particularly on my own entrepreneurship journey. I have met women every step of the way in leadership roles. And that is definitely changing. I mean, I've been one of those people in the early start of my career, and I've sat around the table where I'm the only woman in the room. And I've seen that change. 80% of my team alone are females. But what I would say is that I'm kind of gender neutral in that respect, in that I think a lot of leaders are. And what I see from leaders and what people I've met over the years, I don't think people really go out and go, I need to have a balance on my team, or I need to make sure they're all women. I mean, I've by default ended up by 80% of my team being women, because they're great workers and they're great people and really capable and talented individuals. So I think that's what leaders look for. So I think we do need some level of, how would I say, you reflect in the organisation you're in, understand the role you play and how you navigate your own career, as opposed to be, I'm a woman, so maybe I'm being disadvantaged.
Yeah, and I would agree. I would also be equally gender neutral, and I think you should be gender blind in the appointment, in any case. But there still remains, I say, a cohort of less people that feel less empowered, but I don't think that's necessarily just women. I think there is a disempowerment by virtue of people's socioeconomic status, by virtue of their opportunities for education. But I do think it's still interesting. I, like yourself, work with a lot of women who are in middle to senior management, we'll say, within the public service, and it's very well reflected with like a really strong cohort of women. But I think what's interesting, and I suppose within the public service no more than the private sector, people have to demonstrate ability, and there's like very strong, transparent methods of recruiting. But I think what's really interesting is, there's been an ESRI study showing the upper echelons of the civil service. And the reason I'd focus on that is because they're the policymakers. I mean, they are with their political masters, but they're the policymakers. If you have 63%, and I'm not going to quote a load of statistics, but if you have 63% of the civil service as women, but you've only got 21% of them are sec generals, there is a disconnect. And okay, you may, and a lot of, say, just looking at the study, it's not so much the ability, it's women putting themselves forward or having caring roles or having different. For me, a real strong step forward would be, and this is not for people who are already empowered because they have those opportunities, is for paternity, for equal paternity leave, for that sense of, we look to the Nordic countries all the time. We're always talking about, aren't they great in Sweden, aren't they great in Norway and all of that sort of thing. The reason they have put their policies in place. They didn't wake up of a morning and decide, that men and women are equal. And it's not about equality in terms of a linear, we're all the same and there's no difference. But if there's going to be equal playing fields, it is at the policy level. I'll just offer you one more thing that I observed myself. When we were involved in a particular programme for funding childcare back in the early 2000s, very interesting thing. So we're coming off the entry into the Celtic Tiger. This is a real demonstration of policy at work in Ireland, and the same in every country. childcare facilities and childcare in Ireland, back then, you think now there's difficulty. It was just virtually non-existent. The provision of quite a substantial investment in funding wasn't necessarily an equality for women measure in any amount. It was an economy measure. It was, we have a growing economy, we need to get people back into the workforce. So that was a policy decision. Look where the money is being invested. That'll tell you where policy is directed. And I do think we still, even though there's huge strides, nobody can argue. I mean, very interesting, we're listening to the unfortunate early death of Marion Finucane. 1995, a story she was telling of women not being able to get purchase credit in their own right. That's 1995. That's within our lifetime. We're evolving hugely, but let's not fall asleep at the wheel, I would say.
The empowerment of women, is it something that has to be consciously done, Heather, or is it, as you say, a generic thing, like policy in the public service compared to the private sector? There are certain industries like your own that it's just happened, maybe, or like quotas wouldn't be something you'd be in favour.
I'm totally against the token female and quotas, absolutely, at all levels. So be it at political or just even, as you say, private sector. I mean, again, I can only talk from my own experience. I've had all those same sacrifices. I have 3 children. I've had to raise them. I've had to have a career. I've been very fortunate that I had a family support, and my mother and father had to mind my children at the early stages of my career. Just a fact of life, I guess, at the time. And, even though they were in childcare, those costs were significant even back then. So it is a balancing act of everything. Empowering women, I find, when I sit around a table and I have, 8 entrepreneurs in front of me, and they're all starting off on their journey, I do find what females seem to lack, just because, again, I've had exposure to both genders in my career. But significantly, I think, with women is they're definitely more risk averse. And they don't necessarily have the ability to think of a vision and ambition for their business and take the risks that go with it. So taking the next step of, I'm going to invest, I'm going to take a risk to grow my business, because unfortunately, in order to grow, you have to invest, just seems to be lacking.
Where's that coming from? Is that a genetic thing? Is it a societal thing? Because in other countries, it's completely different, maybe? What is it?
I do think, back to what Derval said, I do think some of it's policy. I do think I see people worried about, an entrepreneur journey is a lonely place. And I have to take significant risk as an individual financially for me and my family. And am I willing to do that? Is kind of the question people end up asking. And while there is support, and there's a lot of, I mentioned 2 programmes going for growth in Acorns, and I know at a regional level there's loads of support networks. But that doesn't make the decision any easier. And also the fact that an Enterprise Ireland, for example, will come and they will look for export and sales and job creation, and they'll look for all those things. And you may not be able to give it. And also you're then accountable. And I think that's a big step change to ask people to get into that mindset. But if I look at those programmes that I mentioned, every single year, circa 120 plus people enter those programmes every year. And that's a network that's been building for 10 years in this country. And they're people who've just set up their own business. Running already new early onset businesses. And that is the level of activity, I think, that has changed over the last 10 years. We wouldn't have seen that before.
Okay, yeah. And I suppose just responding on 2 aspects and 2 really interesting points that you raised there, Heather. I suppose, and going back again, I think the timely publishing or the winning of that study by the young scientists, we don't know why girls or women are more risk averse because we're formed, this is the reality. And I suppose that's something that would be really interesting to examine. I offer you one example which I thought was really, really interesting. In Norway, they have a system of Montessori or early school care which is called Barnhagen, and they obviously have the weather, even though it's colder, but they have the weather. They can be outdoors a lot more. they're predominantly far more male teachers in the Barnhagen system, and they, the children do a lot more physical stuff, and girls and boys alike, whereas we tend to have predominantly female focus. So we might perpetuate that kind of risk kind of theory. But just going back to your Enterprise Ireland, Science Foundation Ireland are exactly the same as well, because they've had a journey and we would have been involved with them along the way. They are, very much, in terms of either the idea has to work, it has to stack up, it has to have, feasibility, has to be the business case, the research proposition has to be peer reviewed, it has to stand up in terms of scientific rigour. But what they were challenged to do a number of years ago, 15 years ago, was actually to look at the composition of the boards that were doing the selection for the award and make sure that that was representative, so that it wasn't the same old, because it happened in Norway. You changed the composition of the board that was doing the selection for the appointment to state boards. Suddenly they had a change, and they did have a marked change, because they weren't looking to the same old, say, accountancy firms or legal firms. They were looking to the creative arts. They were looking to, sectors that were then peopled more by women. Now, I think women and men should be allowed to do exactly what they want. Never should anybody put a march on your ability. But don't put the march on somebody, even if it's like perception-wise, on an opportunity to do things.
Heather Reynolds, thanks very much for coming in this morning.
Thank you, Damon.
Much appreciated. Derval Brown, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I mistakenly said South East Regional Assembly. I've said that before. The Southern Regional Assembly. I'll never get used to that. Listen, congratulations, both of you. Continued success to you and everybody that works with you. Thank you very much. Now, a number of people texting in to say they enjoyed that discussion. Thank you very much, Derval, and to Heather for coming in. Health Services, Richie says, regarding health services, 4 things have to happen. No private clinics at public hospitals. Get rid of top-heavy management, get proper hygienic practices and proper food for patients. Other people saying that the schools are closed from the 14th to 24th for midterm break. Wouldn't it make more sense to have an election during that period because schools are closed anywhere? Parents find it hard with children to get off these days. Now I'm going to go to an interview I did with Brian Whelan out at the Kilmac Railway. They're renovating it out there. Brian is a stonemason. And this follows on from reports at a number of graves are dilapidated and unfortunately are showing weather erosion up at the Methodist Church at St Patrick's Gateway in Waterford City, and that some bones, human fragments, are actually visible. I'm going to have a statement from the Methodist Church in a second. Here's a little chat that I did with Brian Whelan, stonemason. Brian Whelan, how are you getting on?
Brilliant, David.
You've been working here for six weeks here at the Kilmac Thomas, the old railway station. Nice job.
Yeah, it is. Very nice job to be involved in now. It's nice to see you coming back together.
And what's the name of the company?
My company is Set in Stone. We're kind of conservation and construction specialists. Specialise in restorations of historic buildings. But we can do a new build as well on request as well. So we're kind of both angles we cover.
One of the topics that we've been covering a little bit in the last while is this graves and bones being exposed at St Patrick's Gateway. You have a temporary solution at least.
Yeah, our permanent here. Yeah. Yes. As you see here, this is a nice Kilkenny limestone. We can, a similar colour, we could cut that and insert it into the tomb, and it'd be perfect repair, like heritage approved repair. And it'd be ideal, and a bit of respect, because I like to think now, if my grave, my bones were on show, I'd like someone to cover them up fairly quick. I believe it's like this. I know it's not the manager's fault, Tom, but I believe it's like that. About 16 years I was told these bones were on show in the area, so it needs to be done this year, 2020 anyway. It'd be great.
And for something to be put in place, because if other graves get damaged by weather or by other means, that there's a system in place to repair them and to make sure that there's dignity.
Yes, absolutely. That's what they deserve, at least. And such an important church, St Patrick's. Apparently there's over 40,000 bodies in that graveyard, which is a serious amount now. So, and it go back to pre-medieval times. I think it was there since 1050. The first church was there. So, really deserves a bit of respect, that area, I think, in general now anyway.
And it wouldn't be a big job to do what you'd offer to do.
No, a couple of hours of my time, I could make a template, bring that home. I cut the exact piece of stone, like a little jigsaw, and insert it straight in with lime mortar, and that'd be officially done. Then the 4-inch solid piece of stone, never be inside the tomb again, so it should be handy.
And what's holding up that, do you think, at the minute?
It's just a form of formality. It's go through the OPW, and they'll have to appoint their heritage officer or conservation officer to have a look at it, and then they'll assess what needs to be done, and I'll go to tender them for some heritage masons. So come around, it'll take time, but it's just the way it has to be done, I suppose.
Okay, and obviously the quicker it's done, the better.
Yes, definitely. When the bones are on show, if any more damage, anything or looting or anything could go on there, so Yes, it does need to be covered in, it does, straight away.
I'll let you go back to work, Brian. Thanks very much.
No problem, that's brilliant. Thanks, Dave.
Lovely talking to Brian there and the great work he's doing out at the old Kilmac railway station. It's really lovely to see. The Methodist Church, Julie got a statement in from the Methodist Church in Ireland, the owners of St Patrick's Gateway and Patrick Street in Waterford. So it's not St Patrick's Gateway Community Centre. There's been no vandalising of the graveyard in over 20 years. It may look vandalised, but any damage is caused by weather, wind, soil erosion and wildlife activity. They're in the process of contacting the Heritage Officer and the City Council and the National Monument Service to find out what kind of restoration they're allowed to do to put this right and what they're allowed to touch. Since we opened the church as a community centre, the statement says, we've tried to tidy and make the graveyard accessible for the local community. We apologise to all persons who may feel concerned or offended, and we will do what we are allowed to put things right. Brian Whelan has kindly offered his services, and when I get permission to do so, we will get in touch. And it's a great and kind and generous offer. We thank him for his offer. We'd also like to thank Alison Redmond for bringing this to our attention, as we will now have right procedures to put in place for future reference. So some good news there. That was a statement from the owners of St Patrick's Church on Patrick Street in Waterford. Thank you very much for Tom. For that, thanks to Tom and everybody who does all the great work up there, and hopefully that can be sorted soon, because I know it distressed a few people, but as we've heard, it's not vandalism, it's weather erosion, but there are issues in place about how you deal with monuments, and that the Heritage Council, the OPW, have to be involved. Let us know your thoughts and your views. 083 333 975. Text or WhatsApp or call Laura 051 846 123.